It's 10:21, so in fairness to all of you that are on time, we'll get started. And people that come in as time permits, then we can catch them up. So just the way we're going to manage this is I'm going to ask you all to mute yourself so that we don't hear Judy's cat in the background and whatnot. The way I put this presentation together, I'm presuming that you're all planning on being a treasurer. So this is not a meeting of discussions and how you do things. This is how I think Rotary wants you to do things and how my club does things. Certainly we'll have time for questions as we go along. If you have a question while I'm speaking, if you'll type it into the chat, Tim will be watching the chat box, and then periodically he'll stop me and we'll answer your question if there are any.
Hi guys. So, hello friends. Let me introduce you to this is Sarah.
Okay, so let's so we're going to talk about the duties and responsibilities of here's my contact information. Everything that I talk about today is on the website, on the hub, and it's there so you can download it. But if you have any questions, there's my phone number and email address. Please feel free to give me a call or email, and I'll be happy to share whatever I have. Most of what I have is plagiarized anyway, so there's absolutely no pride in authorship. Today's goal is there's threefold. First, we're going to talk about quickly what the board responsibility is. Excuse me. Then we're going to talk about what Rotary thinks your job description is. And then I'll tell you what your real job description is. So that you guys can all plan when you want to start playing solitaire, because I know that's what you're going to do eventually. This is what is on the website and what I'm offering to you today as part of this talk. One of the things is we just finished rewriting our club accounting policy. So there were 4 of us working on this. 3 of us were past presidents. One of the 4 members is our bookkeeper and accountant. Between us, we have close to 90 years in Rotary, so we have a relatively good idea about how things should work. This accounting policy was edited by one of the editors in our club, and then Mr. Rotary gave it the once over. So this is a pretty solid document, but it's a document about our club and how we operate, but it's a good framework if you want to borrow it and use it for your club. The financial management plan is something you need for global grants. Just copy it and put your name on it. Nobody's ever asked me if I had one when we started our global grant, but the book says you're supposed to have this document. So just grab it, copy it, and then you're good to go. We'll be talking a little bit about how we do our financials and our budget. We use Quickbooks. Personally, I'm not a fan of Quickbooks. I don't like it, but that's what we use. I don't even begin to understand Quickbooks. Fortunately, we have 2 CPAs in the club who do understand Quickbooks, and they keep the system working. There's a weekly cash report that we use, and we'll talk about that later. The job description is what Rotary International thinks your job description is, and so I offer that to you for your consideration. And then the last thing we'll talk about today is how to make contributions to the Rotary Foundation. Maybe you all have discovered it, but I just discovered it last year, how to make this job really easy. So we'll go through that. Oops. Sensitive mouse. Okay, so board duties, and I'm going to run through this relatively fast because we'll cover a lot of this later on. The board duty is they have to adopt a budget. This should be first brought to your attention at the joint board meeting before your president-elect takes office. that's the time to take a look at the budget, make any changes, and then that budget is adopted at the first meeting in July when the new board takes over. The board must choose a bank. That's one of their jobs. And we'll talk a little more about the bank later on as well. I think we better start looking at my notes. Yeah, so choosing a bank, that's the easy part, but when you do choose the banks will typically ask you for a board resolution showing that you have the authority to choose the bank. And then the next thing they'll do is they'll look at who signed the board resolution. Typically, the secretary signs the board resolution. So then they're going to ask you to prove that he's a secretary or she's the secretary. And they're going to ask you for the document whose name I forget that you're supposed to submit to the Attorney General every year, is who the club officers are, which I have never submitted to the Attorney General. So I figure I better not start because they'll ask me where all the past 95 were. So then the next thing they'll ask is to prove who the secretary is, and you can do that by showing them the minutes of the meeting where the board approved the slate of officers as you voted them in back in December. And so you'll need that in order to get the bank to accept the signatures for the bank account. We find it so difficult to get and now the banks want everybody to be there at the same time to sign. And we find that so difficult in our club that I only change signatures every 2 or 3 years. We just keep it the executive committee, and it kind of works for get 3 people on the account, and over a 3-year rotating period, it kind of works. But you'll need that. They need to appoint an officer who will pay the bills, and we'll talk more about that later. Every year, they're responsible to conduct an audit, and an audit is a very, you don't want to do an audit. What you want to do is review the financials. If you look at RI, they say hire an accountant. They say that rather lightly. Most of our clubs will have at least 1, if not 2 or 3 CPAs. You all have a banking officer in there, some attorneys, or business people who are comfortable with financials. At the end of the year, preferably after you submit your taxes, just have them do a review. Make sure that the checks you write have an invoice that are backing them up, that the cash you deposit has been properly accounted for. You should have 2 people do this review, and they should be knowledgeable about the club, so that if you're paying Acme Paperclip Company $100 for something, definitely Paperclip should be part of one of your projects, and they should know that just because they're involved in the club. They have to ensure that the members are provided 2 reports every year, a mid-year and an annual. And the one thing that I wasn't aware of that I learned in making this presentation is the annual report. You have to compare this year with last year. So not only do you compare it to your budget, but you have to compare the year end with the prior year end. So that's something we have to figure out how to do. And they have to define what the fiscal year is. That shouldn't be hard. It's June 30. Okay, there we go. Okay, what are the treasurer's duties? This is what RI says your treasurer duties are. Review the prior year activities with the outgoing treasurer. That makes sense. Review your club's financial history. How do you do things? Where does the money come from? Where does the money go? How do you deal with that? Maintain the club accounts, report to the board monthly, and we'll talk about that more later. Work with the club secretary to invoice members for dues and fees. So you need to decide how you're going to, how you're going to do that. And again, we'll talk more about that later. You're responsible for collecting dues. And yet, obviously, you're responsible for managing the cash flow and for paying bills. You get to distribute grants, and we'll talk more about grants later. Manage contributions to the Rotary Foundation. Again, we'll talk about that later. File the annual tax return and charitable trust documents. Obviously, you're going to hire a CPA to do that unless you really have nothing else to do with your life and you want to fill out that 990. And then work with the president-elect and committee chairs to develop a budget. Once upon a time, we used to have the president develop the budget. About 5 years ago, when I became treasurer, after I was president and I became treasurer, it just was a whole lot easier for me as a treasurer to do the budget with input from the president-elect. And then you're supposed to do the provide the mid-year annual report. Okay, so what do we really need to know? What do you really need to do? So cash management. So Rotary International says that you should have two accounts, one for admin and one for club service, one for the charitable arm of the organization. And that's fine if you want to maintain two checking accounts and if you want to balance two checking accounts. My club doesn't do that. We have one checking account and we use Quickbooks to separate the money. We have two divisions within Quickbooks. One reports the admin money and one reports the charitable money or club service, as we call it. And the money does not commingle. It doesn't, I mean, obviously the cash is commingled in the checking account. But on the financials, the money is clearly separated and the money never goes back and forth. Certainly, money never goes from club services into the club admin account. But this year, for the first year, we're moving a significant amount of money out of club admin because we haven't been paying rent at the restaurant where we have meetings, and our dues pays for the rent. So we're moving admin money into club services, and we're this year able to meet all our obligations that we had budgeted for. So we're pretty lucky that way. If you do have a global grant, you have to have a separate checking account for each and every global grant that you're managing. And that's a must. You have no choice in that. Obviously, the global grant chair would be one of the signers on that account. And you have to do that because everything you do with a global grant has to balance. Not only do you have to have invoices for every check you write, but every invoice better balance to something on the checking account. And it's a whole lot easier said than done. We're dealing with a club in Uganda, and the Ugandan shilling is the exchange rate is 3,500 shillings to $1. So we're dealing with millions and millions of dollars, or excuse me, millions and millions of shillings. And thanks to Win Spiller, we actually balanced to the shilling with a $130,000 grant this year. So it's important that you separate that. In our club, the treasurer is authorized to sign checks. I sign all the checks. If it's in the budget, I'm authorized to sign the check. If it's not in the budget, then I go to the board and ask them permission to sign the check. We gave up on, especially during the pandemic, we gave up on me trying to find someone else to sign checks. It's just easier for me to sign them. And since we're going to be doing a review, I feel comfortable that they don't have to, that no one's going to accuse me of sending a check to the wrong place. We'll talk about credit cards later on, but one of the things I do, I pay not a lot, but I pay some stuff with my credit card. So then I have to write me a check to reimburse myself. When that happens, then I ask one of the other club officers to sign the check so that I'm signing a check to myself. Petty cash, you shouldn't have it. I mean, it's my opinion, but I don't think you should have a petty cash account. A petty cash account is where you have a cash box with $300 in it. And when somebody hands you a bill that's insignificant, a $10 bill for paint or something, well, There's no $10 can of paint, is there? $50 for a can of paint. You hand them a $50 bill, put the receipt in the box. That's just not a good idea in Rotary. You should pay, everything should be paid for with a check. So we do keep cash on hand, but that's not petty cash. We just keep cash on hand for making change at meals and things like that. As I said, we use QuickBooks. There's two parts, one admin, one club service. We redid our financials 2 years ago because the board was not really getting a picture of what was going on with, I'm going to try to show it to you here, was not really, okay, bear with me here. Oh, horse feathers. Okay. Okay, this is actually my budget document. What I want to show you is this. The board wasn't really getting a picture of how our various projects went, projects and fundraising. So we actually embedded a P&L into QuickBooks. So this is Casino Night, one of our fundraisers. And so here it initially is all the expenses and the categories that we break the expenses down into. And then here's, excuse me, I mean, that's, God, I can't read that's the income initially.
Can you make it larger, Bob?
I don't know if I can, larger. There you go. So, oops. There we go. So initially is the income, and then here's the expenses, so they can see where the money goes, and then over here is the expected revenue from the source. Then later on down here in our budget, we get to things like we put wreaths on for veterans during once a year, and so here's the donations that we get from club members, and here's the money that we spend on wreaths. And of course, that's supposed to balance to zero. So this is also a check and balance to make sure that we wrote the check for the right amount and we collected the right amount of money. So we've changed QuickBooks so that the board sees this and they're not looking at it on a different spreadsheet or something separate, and hopefully they pay more attention to what's going on. Okay. Let me see if I can, oh, here we go. Oh, horse feathers, how did that happen? I'm sorry. This, come on. Okay. Come on. Sorry, you know, this. Isn't it?
You're looking for where you left off?
Well, this is where I left off, but it's not, oh, well, it's not going to the slideshow. Anyway, so that's how we've set up QuickBooks, and you can see that in the examples we handed out. And then the balance sheet, oh yeah, I wanted to show you that.
There was a question.
Oh yeah.
Was the budget done in QuickBooks or Excel?
Oh yeah. I do it in Excel because I don't know how to use QuickBooks. We then, once I do the budget in Excel, then Judy converts it to QuickBooks, and then the budget resides in QuickBooks once it's been adopted.
Is this one of the documents that's available to them?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they could use it as a template?
Oh, well, I'll show you when we get to the budgeting part how to use the template that I gave to you.
Okay.
This is our balance sheet. And let's see, I may be getting ahead of myself here, but what I wanted to show you is that we do our bookkeeping in a modified cash basis. So everything is cash in our bookkeeping system, with the exception of dues. We do accrue for dues. So that is on an accrual basis. But then at the end of the year, we'll sometimes have projects that we're still working on, and we want them expensed in the current president's year. We don't want the expense to occur in the new president's year. So we book the expense in the current president's year, and then it appears on the balance sheet as a liability. So these are like these items right here are things that we budgeted for in the past, expensed in the past, but the cash is, if you will, in a savings account because we haven't finished the project yet. The other thing is down below here in the equity section, we have an inordinate number of reserve accounts. And this is how we have sort of structured things so that we stay ahead of things. We never spend all the money that we collect every year. What we've been working on doing is this amount right here, club service. We've been working for 4 years to save up enough money so that we can fund an entire year of club service. We go through between $25,000 and $30,000 a year in club service. And the idea is one of these years we'll actually have $25,000 in this equity account. And once that happens, then that will be the budget for the current president. Then the president-elect that year is the chairperson of the fundraising committee. And then the president-elect, based on their success as the chair of the fundraising committee, gets to spend the money that they earn. So if they work like crazy and earn $40,000 in fundraising during the year they're president-elect, that means their budget is going to be $40,000. If for whatever reason things fail and they only make $20,000, then that unfortunate president is going to have to decide what it is they're going to not fund. So we're probably about three years away from getting to that point. Okay. Let me get back to. Oh, here we go. Okay. Budgeting. I don't think we need to talk a lot about budgeting. I budget. Everything I do is normally on a historical basis. The only thing that I forecast is meals. Then of course, dues. Our dues depend upon what the expenses are, and then we adjust the dues accordingly. I try to get input from committee chairs for expenditures. As you all probably know, that's like pulling teeth. The president, they give me the input on what they want to do for their projects, and we load that in. Ideally, I ask the chair of each committee, whether it's fundraising or projects, to give me a P&L for the project so that we know how to account for the money and can take a look at each project. And we do keep track over years of how projects go. Revenue. So, I mean, we set our dues, fines, or happy bucks. Other things we charge for having a birthday, we charge for having an anniversary. That's all pretty much fixed. Community service, the way I work that, our two big fundraisers, we have a bike ride and we do casino night. And I have a pretty good idea of what they've been doing over the years. And so I have two budgets. I have the budget that I expect them to actually come up with. So I expect casino night to come up with $24,000 or $25,000 in revenue. But on the budget, I only use 21,000 of that money in order to fund the club services that we do every year. The reason I challenged them for an additional $4,000, because that's the money that goes into our savings account to eventually get us to the point where this year we're working on last year's fundraisers. So I do that from a historical standpoint. Credit cards. So this is fun. So how are you going to charge your members? I've been in two different clubs. One club, meals were cash. You walked in and you had to have a $20 bill to hand to the guy at the door. If you didn't have 20 bucks, then you had to borrow it from somebody so you could hand them 20 bucks. My club bills. The issue with billing is you end up with an accounts receivable, which means that somewhere you have to have cash to support the club, because your accounts receivable it's going to be a lodestone around your neck, as you may be aware. So cash flow does become an issue. And so that's something you and the board are going to have to decide. Just out of curiosity, if we could get just a hand raised, how many people charge cash for lunch? Just two? Is that all I'm seeing, Tim, is two people?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As a treasurer, that's what I would do, but I don't have a choice in that. Is there a question? Linda, do you have a question?
We also accept credit cards for meals.
Yeah.
And we account for that.
So
only Square transactions.
So do you charge the member? How do you deal with the credit card fee?
They pay that.
Yeah. So as I say here, we've
charged to their credit card.
Excuse me?
It gets charged to their credit card.
Right. So in California, technically there's a statute that says it's illegal to charge a fee for using a credit card. However, the federal courts put a stay on that order, and the Attorney General is not enforcing it. So it is legal for you to charge a fee. And in Nevada, it's okay to charge a fee as well. Now, my board did not want me automatically adding a fee to the credit cards. So instead, I ask everybody for a donation. So it's
but yet ARCO is allowed to charge you 35 cents to use a debit card.
And it's legal, yes, because, the federal court said, they didn't say it was legal or illegal about charging fees. They simply said the Attorney General could not enforce the statute. And it's being appealed. But yes, well, and think about it. I mean, the IRS, if you try to use a credit card tomorrow to pay your taxes, the IRS is going to charge you for that. If you go to the DMV to pay your car registration, the DMV is going to charge you for that. So anyway, yeah, so credit, yeah, we use Square as well. You can also use, the Club Runner has a function that allows you to, members to pay automatically with their credit card, although I think it's expensive and we haven't figured out how to get Club Runner to download into Quickbooks, so we're not going there. We also just signed up for PayPal. Wasn't my choice, but we had to for the silent auction we had. and they're actually less expensive than Square. They're only 2.9% rather than the 3.5% for Square. But all of this creates more work for the treasurer, because now you have to pull down more reports. And so I don't know about you, but I get double time when I have to pull down extra reports. And what 2 times 0 is what? I forget. Yeah. So delinquent accounts, your board has to decide what a delinquent account is. Is it 2 months, 1 month, 3 months worth of charges? And then who gets to follow up on the delinquent accounts? And if I'm guessing, I would expect it's the people that I'm looking at on the screen. Okay, so enough of that. Paying bills, again, I would suggest you never use cash. Don't use a cash box. I think I already said that in our club, I sign checks for budgeted items. The board approves the others. Credit cards, we do use credit cards. So members will be doing whatever, and we have to go buy paint. And so somebody will go to the paint store and use their credit card to buy the paint, which is fine. Just make sure you get receipts, get the credit card receipt, get the invoice from get both the credit card receipt and the invoice from the vendor, and then write the member a check. Yeah, Lindy.
In our club, they have to fill out, first of all, they have to provide me with the receipt, but they have to fill out a reimbursement request as well.
I attached a sample of that. That's on the hub. If you'll look, I did attach a sample. We don't do that. We just get the invoice and the credit card receipt. But that's a good idea. I don't think it's a bad idea.
Well, sometimes they do, but mostly they're getting trained. They're getting better.
Right.
About submitting them.
Okay, credit card.
Does the club have a credit card?
Yeah, that's a sore point. My club says I can't have a credit card, which is fine for me. But that's an issue you have to deal with your club. I mean, because later on, I'm going to tell you that you should use your credit card to pay the Rotary Foundation every year when you make your annual donation. And our club, that can be $14,000, $15,000, $16,000. And do you want that writing on your credit card even for 2 days? So that's an issue. But debit cards, I guess, are an alternative. And for some reason, I guess they're less controversial. I don't really understand why. But more and more, you're going to be expected to use credit cards. RI would like you to do nothing but use credit cards. Okay. Okay.
There's a comment.
Yeah.
We use Venmo, works well. Venmo, VENMO.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways of transferring cash back and forth. It's just a matter of documenting it and who has the password. I think the only thing I'd worry about with electronic moving of cash like Venmo or paying things with PayPal is passwords. That's kind of a dicey issue and could cause problems, but that's up to the board. If the board authorizes it and you can document it, then that's fine.
Another comment about debit cards. The comment was that there's a lot of fraud with debit cards.
Right. Well, that's a problem using any credit card. I have a Facebook account that I use to publicize our Century bike ride, and my Facebook account was hacked, and I found myself buying thousands of dollars worth of makeup beauty products, which, as you can see, don't work. But I did get the money back, but my account got hacked.
Another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you charge members who pay their account with credit card using Square? And then is it a set amount or an actual percentage?
Percentage, 3.5%. Yeah, 3.5%. Okay. Okay. So one of the things to be aware of, problem that I ran into, what we'll do sometimes is when a member buys something for the club, paint, lumber, or something or another, they'll give me an invoice and they'll say, just go ahead and charge it to my account, or credit my account with this amount of money. Well, that works for a lot of things, but not for grants. Because the minute you do that internal journal entry, you lose track of where the money is and where the money is going. And then you cannot document it for district as to how you paid for the lumber or the paint. So never credit a member's account to pay them back for something that they purchased. If they're purchasing something for a grant, make sure you reimburse them with a check. And then on top of that, we had a problem last year where we were building two different playground at two different schools, two different grants. We were building things using lumber. Well, we have one lumber company in Grass Valley that gives us a discount. So we went there and bought all the lumber. Well, we bought all the lumber at the same time for both projects. I eventually worked it out, but what I should have done was split the invoice down the middle and written two different checks, so that one check would be for Lyman Gilmore and one check would be for Union Hill. We worked it out, but don't get yourself into that situation. If you've got more than one grant using the same materials from the same vendor, ideally get two different invoices, two separate checks, so that each grant is clean. If a member does use their credit card, just make sure you get adequate documentation to go for it. Okay. Source documents for audit purposes. Source documents are important. All of our cash goes through our weekly cash report, and I gave you an example of that. All the cash goes through that, whether it's fundraising, dues, whatever it is, members paying with their credit cards, everything goes through that weekly cash report. So you have a single document to go back to prove your cash. If we do a pass the hat, which we do on a pretty regular, well, unfortunately, with all the disasters, it's been a pretty regular thing. Just create a separate spreadsheet for pass the hat so you know who to bill and you have something to go back to. Reports for fundraisers, we use Sage, Club Runner, PayPal. I use Bike Reg for the bike ride. Just set those up so that if there's different revenue sources, that you've set up an account within Club Runner or within Bike Reg or whatever you're using to track donations, food, tickets, or swag that you're selling. Cash at our casino night, I walk out of that building at night with anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 in cash. That cash needs to be counted at the event, and two members have to count the cash. So you got to find a back room, go to the back room, count the cash, make out the deposit slip right then and there, and have the other member initial the deposit slip. So there's no issue about the cash, because we don't have anything to balance that cash back to. Board report. This is what our CPA suggests that we show the board every month. The balance sheet, the P&L showing against the budget, the check register, and bank reconciliation. This is what they want. This is what she recommends we show them. Audit control, Whoever writes the checks shouldn't be depositing money in the bank. Whoever writes the checks should not be balancing the checking account. The more you separate these functions, the better it is, and the less likelihood that something bad happens. And in case you think in Rotary it doesn't, we almost lost our global grant because the president of it, not me, the president of another club was caught embezzling money from one of the grants. So it does happen. So you separate duties as much as you can. And the bookkeeper, whoever balances the checking account, has to have independent access to the bank records. It's not something that should be going through the club president or through the treasurer. They should be able to access those records independently. The Rotary International says hire an account. Oh, no, excuse me. So obviously you're going to get a CPA to file your tax return, again, unless you really want to do it yourself. If you have a club foundation, I don't know that much about foundations in the Rotary world, but the board, there should be a different board. Certainly members of the Rotary board can be on the foundation board, but they shouldn't be identical. The Rotary, your club board should not be the board of the foundation. The president of the foundation board should not be the president of the club. And ideally, you'll have one or two folks who are not Rotarians on the foundation board if that happens. Risk management, as a treasurer, risk management falls under your purview. You get to monitor the general liability policy, and hopefully you know how to access that. If you haven't already, you should adopt the district's youth protection plan. And personal information, we threw that back to district. At least I hope our president threw that back to district. We do not have a policy on protecting personal information. And you do have personal information, whether you know it or not, on everybody in your club. Rotary International does not have a suggested policy, although they do have a policy that affects Rotary International. And you'll also notice the Club Runner has a privacy policy, but our club does not. And it's probably something we're going to have to deal with in the future, but I'm hoping district will come up with one and then we can simply adopt theirs. Okay, last but not least, paying Rotary International. If you haven't discovered this, there's an attachment available on the website that is in the packet. And it's how to pay Rotary International electronically. No more paper. So if you follow the instructions on the Word document that I attached, you go in there, you pull up your club. All the members in your club are right there, and you just go down and check their name and how much they donated. Done. And you can indicate that the money is going to Polio Plus, to the World Fund, or to Rotary, to the foundation. You just go down and click, 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 and you've documented the donation. And then they want a credit card. So this is where the credit card comes in. They really don't want live checks in Evanston anymore. They want your credit card. And so I use my credit card. And then I quickly write myself a check and drop it in the mail or then send it to my credit card. But it is very effective and so much easier than filling out paperwork that we used to have to do. And then, of course, the other thing is Rotary Direct, and Rotary would very much like all of our members to participate in Rotary Direct. This is a little more difficult for your foundation chair because then they're not quite sure how much is being donated, when it's being donated, and whether or not you're going to meet your goals. But Rotary Direct is a great way. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it's easy for people to donate. But check out that one page that I sent to you on how to donate to Rotary, the Rotary Foundation. Okay, so that's.
We have a question for you.
My wisdom. Any questions?
There is a question on chat. Want to make sure we emphasize where they find the documents that you're offering.
Well, it's let me see if I can. It's if you go back, they call it the hub. If you go back to the Rally website and you scroll down through the various sessions and stop at the treasurer session, underneath that, there's 6 documents listed, and they're all you can download them all. And if for some reason the website doesn't work, just send me your email address and I'll send you whatever you want.
Okay, I think we're caught up on the chat list, Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob, I was just on the foundation session and I saw that ability to kind of pay the foundation donations, you know, by going to your club on Rotary Direct, and you've got a list of them. I didn't realize that was there, but that seemed to me a much easier way of paying the donations by member. And also your idea of using your own credit card, because I was wondering, well, you know, how do you do that? But using your own credit card, getting reimbursed by check, that just seems to be like a much easier way of doing things.
Well, and it happens right now. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, if you send Rotary a check, it gets posted maybe in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Nowadays, I mean, maybe when the pandemic is over, it'll change, but the credit card, it happens right now. So there's no question about it. And it's the same thing. If you'll notice, when they ask you to pay your international dues, how to do a wire transfer and how to pay by credit card is in 20-point pitch, 20-point lettering. How to pay by check is in 8 points. So, I mean, they don't want checks.
And Bob, when you make that check out to pay off your credit card, someone else signs that check for you? Yes,
someone else. I attach to the, in my file, I put the receipt from Rotary International, the receipt, you know, my credit card documentation that I've paid for it with my credit card, and then I have somebody else sign that check.
That's the important part.
Usually it's a big check.
Yeah.
Now, frankly, this year during COVID, we haven't met in person for, I don't know, 14 months. So what I do instead is I've been signing my own checks, but I do make the executive committee aware of that, and I show them the documentation that I'm attaching, so they know.
Yeah,
and it's a graduate of college anyway, so it doesn't matter.
You'd want to be very open about that kind of transaction.
Yeah.
Very large.
But more and more, I'm finding that I use my credit card.
Has the Attorney General ever tapped you on the shoulder, wondering where all this money is going in and out of your account?
The only time I get called by the Attorney General is when we advertise casino night and they want to know if we're gambling.
Oh.
So that's usually when I get the call from the Attorney General.
And your executive treasurer tracks your credit cards and makes sure it goes in the right place also.
Yeah, I can't put anything past Judy. I try, but I can't. Anyway, any other questions? Okay. Well, I hope this has been informative. I hope it's what you were looking for. If not that I'll be asked to do this again, but I would pass it on to the Education Committee. If there's something I left out or any comments or criticism, please either send me an email and I'll forward it to Anita, or write to one of the folks that's responsible for Rally and have them include it in future discussions, because the treasurer is always one of the topics on the leadership assembly. So want to make sure that it's worthwhile for folks in the future. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. All right. So if anything comes up in the future, I know this wasn't a collaborative event today, but if anything ever comes up in the future and you have a question, give me a buzz or drop me an email, and I'll be more than happy to, talk with the powers that be. Fortunately, I'm lucky that I have some experts on my speed dial. My son-in-law is a CPA. My best friend in life is an attorney and a CPA. So I have those experts, and God knows I've got some of the best Rotarians in the world in our club. So I have access to a lot of people and a lot of information. Be more than happy to share what we learn. So anyway, with that, time for a cup of coffee.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, we'll see you all later.